Hello, and welcome to the online edition of the Shenandoah Youth Film Festival in 2021. My name is Alex Eggersdorfer, and I'm the festival correspondent and also assist with the selection for our film festivals. Today, we are joined by Kayla Saunders, who's the writer-director of Almost Home, which runs in our short selection of the festival. Hopefully, everyone who's joining this Q&A or watching it later on will have just seen the film. And so that context is provided. Hi, Kayla. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good.
Okay. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit to our audience who have just seen the film, obviously?
Sure. My name is Kayla Saunders. Hello. I am a filmmaker, writer, director out of Roanoke, Virginia. I recently, well, I guess 2 years ago, graduated from James Madison University, where I was in their film school program.
Great. And where are you calling in from right now?
Roanoke.
Okay, great. So your film Almost Home is a long form short. It's almost 30 minutes. It's quite narratively accomplished. It's very well structured, and it does seem like there's a filmmaker at work here who has had some experience, at least writing, directing in the industry. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in filmmaking and what led to Almost Home?
Yeah, so I've been working professionally in the industry going on about almost 6 years now. Um, I got started in filmmaking. Well, I've always wanted to be a director, and I started in high school directing theater. Me and my friend had written a play, and it was performed at Mill Mountain Theater, which is like a local theater here. And so when I got to college, I decided I was going to be in the like film school program at James Madison University. And I reached out to somebody who also went to the same high school I did, and she was already working in the industry forever. And I emailed her and I was like, hey, I'm interested in being a filmmaker. I want to get into film. And she just decided to take a chance on me, like this person she had met once, and gave me my first job on a feature film set as a production assistant. But from there, I was able to meet so many people who have like given me job opportunities to kind of work my way out of the PA position in the industry. And I've been writing ever since.
Right. And is Almost Home, I guess, your first directorial and screenwriting effort, or were you doing other films before this one?
This I've written other things before. This is the first one that I think I've written that I felt deemed worthy to be seen on the screen and be put into festivals. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one thing I was thinking about while watching the film was I was so curious about when you were able to shoot this. Did you shoot this before the pandemic or during?
It's funny. We had made it just in time, right before everything shut down. So we were shooting in February, right before everything happened in March.
And
Yeah.
so you were editing probably while the pandemic was happening or while that just started getting up, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of editing during the pandemic, trying to get with my editing partner and one of my friends who I could edit with because it's hard to do it by yourself and it's tedious.
Right. Was that difficult, or did the quarantine kind of change your editing process in general?
Well, of course, with the pandemic, I feel like I'm not the only creator who can say that there was like a lack of motivation a little bit just because there was fear surrounding everything that was happening. So it's kind of like I should be editing, but also I'm very interested in what's happening in the world right now. But I had my good friend who was able to kind of help motivate me through, and we, motivated each other. We were working on dual projects kind of at the same time. And so we were, safe editing over Zoom together. So I was able to get a good amount of it done, or like a base edit done, especially in like those few beginning months.
That's great. Yeah, I don't know if you were thinking about this while editing during, I guess, a pandemic when we were all separated from each other, but the film almost thematically kind of resonates on that level as well, kind of being distanced away from
Yeah.
your family members, not being able to be together, and also being isolated and wanting to travel. We see Abigail in the film. She's in her spaceship in the backyard and she has her helmet on the entire time. She's so eager to get out, explore the world, and also be with her mother. I was wondering if you thought about that at all when you were putting this film together during this time of isolation.
Well, no, now that you mention it, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But honestly, when I was editing, it didn't really even resonate with me that, she's needing to get out of somewhere, and we were all trying to get out of somewhere. But,
I think it was my second time watching it where it was like, I wonder why this is resonating so much right now. And then that's the kind of conclusion I came to. But the story itself, it feels like it might have been pretty personal or it came out of certain experiences. So I'm just curious where this story came from, where this idea came from, how it developed. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So this story, I think it's always weird, and I always tell people when they ask me like, where do your ideas come from? I don't know if it's just being a storyteller, you get like kind of just bits and pieces of a story before you see it. And the first thing that I thought of was a little girl with a telescope. And I was like, that seems like an interesting story. I'm sure that'll be put somewhere in a story later on. And then this story had developed from kind of that image. And the character of the grandfather, Robert, is actually based off of my grandfather. His name was Robert. He passed away a few years ago now, but his like inspiration and how his mannerisms are all through this film. When I was younger, he used to take me and my brother to school all the time. He would go take us to the grocery store, and because we of course weren't running around going into freezers, but we were at the grocery store with him. He used to come to our school all the time. So he's largely a part of what inspired, especially that character, and kind of wanting to, show that family dynamic there.
Right. Another thing I found really fascinating about the film was the kind of almost revisionist kind of role reversal here, where we see a female astronaut and also her daughter wanting to be an astronaut, where usually within cinema we've seen this basically be a pretty male dominated subgenre or kind of topic where we have like, oh, dad's up in space or the son wants to go be an astronaut, but this is rarely a female centered story. So I was wondering if that was a conscious decision or if that just came about quite naturally for you.
It did come about very naturally, I think. When I first thought of the story, I knew it had to be a little girl playing the character, and then her mother. So of course the story is based off of the real space shuttle Columbia. Now, of course, that I'm sure there might not have been a family like that. The family is fictional, but the event is very real. And when I was doing research, I found lots of pictures of course, the astronaut team who went up in space, and there were quite a few women on the team. So I was very aware of that, and I really wanted to be able to honor the crew who went up. So it's not only a story of like my grandfather who was a big part of my life, but I wanted to honor and make sure that people know the sacrifices that have been made, and in the name of exploration, I guess, and to be able to educate kids on certain events, and also let them know that in face of adversity and horrible circumstances, sometimes it's okay to ask for help, and to still have a dream, and that family dynamic of wanting to accomplish that dream and holding each other up as a community.
Right. And in, I guess, trying to convey a authentic family dynamic on screen, how did that casting process go for you? Had you worked with child actors before? How was it working with the actress of Abigail? I know there's probably some limitations as to how many hours child actors can work and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Yeah, there are a great deal of limitations for kids. Of course, in the industry, I think kids are only allowed to work somewhere between 8 and 9 hours, if I'm thinking of that correctly. I have worked with kids before on a certain level. I hadn't worked with the little girl who played Abigail. Her name is Bayla Ware, and she is the most professional child I have ever worked with. But I was introduced to her through another friend. She is a theater actress, most like predominantly, I believe, her and her siblings. But I saw some of her work that she had done, and I thought she was perfect for the role. But she's probably one of the first child actresses who I've worked with on a professional level.
Right. And that dynamic on set was really good as well, I'm assuming, right? It kind of shows in the film, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely was. She's very professional. As I said before, she's like a little adult. I'll say, I need you to do this or feel this emotion or be this way. And you kind of like to use the as if technique that I know a lot of actors and directors like to use, feel it's as if this or as if that is happening to you. But she was very on it. And I'm like, do you know your lines here? We can rehearse your lines. She's like, oh no, I know mine. And her mom is very involved to help her also. So that was nice to have her actual mom on set to help us.
That's great. How long was the pre-production process? Was that quite lengthy, or like you said, that idea seemed to come about quite quickly, or was this more of an extended process? And how also did you get your team together and funding and all that stuff? So how did this find its feet?
So pre-production, I'm the kind of filmmaker who, even if it's short, even if it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, I need good amount of time to make it work, because at the end of the day, I always say you want to be happy with what you have on the screen. So I took at least 3 or 4 months of pre-production to find my team and to get my actors in place. Finding the team, I would say, was the easiest part, because where I am, we have just a great community of filmmakers, especially the ones I've worked with before. We're all friends, and it feels just like a big family here. So they were very willing to help me and accommodate with what I could offer them, even if it was just food for the day. Funding was the most challenging part. And I think it's probably the most challenging part for any independent filmmaker. I think like you're shaking your head like, yeah, I can relate. Yeah, but that came out of really just me working and doing different things, trying to, raise money on my own. I did try GoFundMe for a while. It was all right, didn't really work out that much. I raised at least $500 there, maybe, and it was enough to get my cinematographer back over here from California. And then everything else was out of pocket, or just using props that I already had. I had my family help some, not with funds, but like helping me build different things. That cardboard ship had to be built. So they had a good time helping me build that. And yeah, that's how it came
Right.
together.
Like you said, you had, was it your cinematographer who came in from California?
Yes, his name is
Yeah,
David Perry.
David Perry. Being a filmmaker who's not working in a place like New York or LA, but working out of Roanoke, I'm assuming, is where this film was shot as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of benefits are in working in a place that isn't necessarily as focused on industry as an independent filmmaker, and what are maybe some of the cons if you want to go into them at all?
So you said pros working in the place where it's
In
not.
a place, yeah, that's like not as like the epicenter of like the Hollywood circuit, so to speak.
Well, I mean, people are very interested. I think they're a lot more interested in what you're doing. So the community here is, I mean, Roanoke's not too terribly big, but when you tell them what you're doing and what your goal is, especially for like the city and education for children, they are very interested in what you're doing. I worked with our museum here, the Roanoke Transportation, or sorry, Virginia Transportation Museum, and they were very accommodating to letting me use the rocket. I think it's called the Jupiter missile, that's outside of the museum. And people are just genuinely fascinated, because it's not something they see every day. We have some smaller productions that come, some features that come here. And when you tell people like, oh, what are you, I'm making a film, they're like, oh, what are you doing? What is it about? So they want to be involved. Sometimes they want to be extras, or they just genuinely want to know like what the story is about, because it's not something that happens every day. So they're a lot more accommodating to help you, because they want their store on camera to get business. And a lot of times that's something we tell them, like, hey, if you would help us out, let us use your storefront, it might drum up some business, because a lot of people will see it. The cons, I think, is that I could say in terms of setting, sometimes you have to go very, very far out to find what you want. But Roanoke is pretty good in that it's city, and also it's a lot of fields and wooded areas farther out you go. So we have, of course, our main downtown, which could work for a larger city setting. But if you want to see like woods or something, you have to go pretty far out. So that might be a con there.
I guess I have another question about your personal directing style. So do you have any like practices that you put into place when your team shows up in the morning for a full day of shooting? how do you kind of, as the, I'm assuming you're kind of like the leader of this ship, how do you establish kind of a healthy dynamic amongst the entire team every day on set?
I definitely let people know, like in terms of my crew, that I'm very accommodating, I guess, towards them and extremely appreciative. And I always tell people who are either starting out on their first set, or who are hiring a team for the first time, to make sure you are extremely appreciative of what they are doing for you, because they don't have to help you make your film. You are either paying them low budget, you're either paying them nothing, but they do it because they love what they do, and they also, they want to help you out. But you need to be extremely appreciative, and understanding when you are working with a team on set. And that's something that I always make sure I do. Saying thank you can be a small thing, but to some people it's a really big thing. So that's always something important that's for me to do on set for my team.
Right. That's great. Your information said you're 24. Is that correct?
I am. I mean, I guess I just turned 24 not too long ago.
Okay, you just turned 24. Still very, very young, and I guess this is your first major project. Where do you see, I guess, the next step? What do you see as your next project? What do you see down the line? What kind of filmmaker do you want to continue being?
Well, I guess
I know it's a really tough question.
that is a large question. I do have a project in writing at the moment that I'm working on, and it is longer, substantially longer than Almost Home was. I definitely want to be more of a feature writer, I suppose. I would say I am a dramatic writer. I don't do comedy very well, but I can get emotions going. So I do would like to, aspire more to be a dramatic feature writer. Yeah.
Great. Actually, I have one more question about your editing process. The film very much also deals with flashbacks and having to basically convey the state of mind of the characters through editing and montage. Is that something that you had already basically like written into the script, or was that something you found later on in the editing room?
The flashbacks were definitely written in. There is like a dynamic switch between seeing a traumatized older gentleman in Robert, the grandfather, and then towards the end it switches to Abigail. So it kind of, I wanted to show how somebody's feelings, I guess, can rub off on somebody else, without even meaning to. Like, he had been trying to hold all this in, and then when he finally tells her about her mother, you can see the dynamic switch to her being the one who's a little bit more, I don't want to say traumatized, but maybe, yeah, traumatized toward the situation. But it was definitely written in that way, that, we need to show the flashbacks of how she's feeling and he's feeling.
Great. And I have one final question for you. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I guess relating to Abigail, was your imagination quite vivid as a child as well?
Oh yeah, it still is. It is still very, very vivid imagination. I think that helps make a good writer, somebody who can visualize what they want to put on screen. And I'll never get over the fact that you can write something on paper and then have that exact thing shown on screen. I will never get over that. But I think it helps make a good writer if you have a very vivid imagination.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kayla. It's been lovely talking with you. We're very excited to show Almost Home to our audiences. I'm sure they're appreciating it right now at home on our online film festival. And we're hoping to show more of your content in the future, and hoping to talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.